Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar, SEO Wars, How to Resist the Dark Side and Earn Links Organically, presented by Page One Power and Search Engine Land. I'm your host, Cynthia Ramsaran. Before we begin, here are some helpful viewing tips. You can customize any of the windows for your viewing experience. And if you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A box at any time to communicate with us. You can also type in questions for the speakers about their presentation at any time. During the latter part of the presentation, the team will share real-world examples of how they analyze sites and find opportunities for link building. We invite all of you to participate by using the Q&A box to share examples of how you've been finding opportunities for link building. Without further ado, let's get to the presentation. I'd like to give a warm welcome to the Page One Power team. Michael Johnson, Danica McClure, Tyler Bain, Alex Gibson, and Norm Vogel. Michael, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We're so excited to chat with you all today. We want to do something fun for May the 4th for Star Wars Day, so we're hitting it hard with the Star Wars theme. So really quick, if you want to answer this poll, really want to learn a little bit more about each of your current levels and what you're working on in your organization from a link building perspective. So the question is, does your organization actively try to earn links? The answers are yes, and we feel great about our current solution, whether that's internal or with another agency. Yes, but we're struggling. So maybe you're trying to earn links, but you're just maybe not having the success you're looking for, or the current agency you're working with isn't working very well. Then the other two is no, but we want to start, and no, and we're not looking to start. So those are the options there. We'll go ahead and give you a second to fill those out, and then we'll go to the results. Awesome. So it looks like a lot of folks here are in the right place then. You're either struggling with your current efforts or you're looking at getting started. So that's a perfect situation to be in as we chat here. Really what I wanted to do is put together a crack team of our best link builders here at Page One Power, coming from different angles to show you how we earn links every day. So some of the questions that we hope to be able to answer for you today are questions like, how do I get real humans to actually want to link to my site? One of the big things that tells you if your link's organic is if you're able to connect with real people and get them to want to link. Next, how do I know what links are safe and what will drive results? What kinds of content earns links? How can I create that linkable content? How do I find the right person to contact on a target site? And how can I sound more personable and communicate value in my outreach? And then last, if we have time, maybe we can even do some fun Star Wars questions, answer the time-old question of, did Han shoot first? So one of the first things I want to do is make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of definitions, right? I talk to hundreds of people every year about their link building strategies, and everyone has their own definition of what a white hat or organic link is. The definition that we're running with today is that what makes a link truly organic is that it is earned through a genuine connection. That means you as a human being found another human being on the web and you've outreached to them to try to earn a link. Next, it should be earned based on merit. And what being earned based on merit means is that it's the next point, that it's providing value to humans. So you've reached out to this other person. You're now showing them the value that your content or your site provides to their audience. And that's the basis of the link. So what is not an organic link? An organic link is not paid for. The minute that money changes hands, you're no longer doing organic link building, you're doing advertising. So that's a sign that you're not on the right track. Next, if your link is getting thrown up on a site that anybody and their Wookiee can publish on. So you'll see a lot of link building companies will just have this kind of Rolodex of blogs that anybody can publish on, and they'll just throw your link up on there. That feels a little bit more like blog spam than I would say true organic link building. And then last, if the link is created through any kind of scheme, whether that's a PBN or a link exchange, something that takes the human aspect out of link building, that's not a truly organic link. So always think about those kind of core principles here of building genuine connections based on merit and providing value to humans. So what are the ingredients of the recipe of having a successful link building campaign? For me, I've kind of found it to be four primary things. First is you need linkable content. And what linkable content is it's that connection point that connects your website to the rest of the web. Just like the force is the connection between all things in the galaxy, your linkable content connects your website to the rest of the web. So we'll talk about how to create that. Next is target sites. So you're going to need to find hundreds, thousands potentially of sites that are good fits for you, that you want to try to get links from. And it takes a lot of time to find those sites. Next, time for outreach. It's going to take, to reach out to hundreds of sites and send them multiple rounds of outreach. You're going to need to be able to devote consistently a good block of hours each week to be able to do link building. And then last, you're going to need to know the outreach best practices. So you're going to need to know how to sound compelling, how to be able to communicate value and get in touch with people so that you can get them to link to your site. And the great news is we've got experts here on our team that do all of these things every day. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off over to Norm, who is one of our experts here on linkable content, and let him chat to you a little bit about how to create linkable content.
All right. So thank you, Michael, very much. And thank you, Cynthia, for starting us up. The real essence of linkable content is deceptively simple. It really revolves around authentic human value and connections. So any content that offers unique value to a well-defined audience that you can either outreach manually or reference contextually in other content, that is a linkable asset, simply put. But what really characterizes a linkable asset is kind of looking past yourself, particularly if it doesn't really matter, actually, if you make your money through services, if you make your money through advertising, or even if you make your money through direct retail. The same principle always applies. It's your linkable content is not responsible for drawing traffic, and it's not responsible for driving your conversions. So you have to look past your own interests or the interests of your website and go, what am I an expert in? What needs does my audience have? And what larger demographic or group or audience? How can I redefine my target audience so that it swells into a larger group? That's how you really begin to define an audience that you can provide that unique value to. A note on unique value. When I say unique value, I mean, you can't just say the same thing that everyone else is saying. If you look at your product or your service or your brand, it's not just a matter of regurgitating what else is happening, what your competitors are saying. Bring something new to the table. If there's a common question, provide a newly substantial and comprehensive answer that adds to the conversation. You can write reviews. You can add commentary to newsworthy topics. Anything that highlights your expertise and the value of your brand and your content, and that contributes to conversations that are happening elsewhere. That's unique value. One thing that you want to avoid really at all costs, which Michael already mentioned, and I think this is kind of a theme that we touch on throughout this. Linkable content, if it's not about you and it's not about whatever you're selling, you don't want to use promotional language, which means you don't want to tout all the positives of your brand. You don't want to tell people why they should choose you or buy your products. You don't want to use calls to action, which I know feels like anathema to most marketers and copywriters, but the linkable asset is about providing free, compelling value, not extracting value from anyone who's going to read it. The way that you incorporate your target pages that you want to rank better, or pages that you want to support their keyword visibility, whatever your goals are, you support those goals by including contextual, natural internal links. Again, not promotional, not calls to action, but the same way that you conceived your topic by looking at what you do and who it appeals to. Think about what your product, your service, your brand, your mission, whatever you're about, how does that fit into the topic at hand naturally? And you link to that. So to try to illustrate this a little bit better, I'm going to do a quick screen share and show off a real world example of a linkable asset that Page One Power actually created for a company. So bear with me for just a second as this gets live. So the company in question here is called Atera, and simply put, they provide IT remote monitoring software. So very quickly we looked at that and we went, okay, this is a business that sells a tool to other businesses. So if we only focus exclusively on their target audience, that's extremely limiting. So how can we redefine who they appeal to increase the size and diversity of that group? And very quickly we went, well, there's probably women working in IT. Women is a much broader category than remote managed service providers, even though there is some overlap there. So there's enough of an overlap that we're confident that it's still relevant to their target audience. But by focusing on women in IT instead of one subset of the IT group, we can see there's a lot more opportunity now to reach different audiences and expand the relevance of our client. Women in particular appealed to us as a target audience here because in IT and technology careers in general, women are historically and still currently pretty severely underrepresented. So in defining our audience, we also identified something of value that we can offer. That is tools, resources, information, networking opportunities, et cetera, to help women in or interested in pursuing IT careers get the education that they need, meet like-minded people, so on and so forth. So with that kind of value proposition front and center, we just went right into the topic. What do women already know? What do women want to know about working in IT or pursuing a tech education? And pretty quickly, you can see I highlighted it right here. The Atera link becomes very relevant because, hey, if you actually want to work in the field of IT, this is the type of tool that you might want to use. And in fact, we talk about the merits of these tools with respect to working from home, an interest our target audience might have. So do this. We're not writing just about Atera and their products. We're writing about everything we can conceive of that our target audience might need to make it as comprehensive, useful, and unique as possible. So going back to the slide, you can see what result did we get? Well, not only were we able to build a lot of links, but we built some particularly relevant links to this asset because women in tech careers and education paths, they're served by government websites and university websites. So they're very authoritative and they're extremely relevant. So it turned out to be just an incredible success story for us because we lined up the audience, the client, a unique value proposition, and didn't just focus on promoting a tool. So a lot of that obviously dovetails very directly with how we do outreach and how we find those opportunities. So I'm going to pass this off to Alex and Danica to talk about how we do site finding outreach.
Thank you, Norm. That was great. I appreciate the handoff. And as you were talking, as Norm was explaining all the work that goes into creating really solid, great linkable content, a lot of those same principles apply when we're doing our site finding. When we're looking for those sites and those audiences out on the web and the pages that they've created, we really look to find sites that are relevant to our topic. The Atera example is a great example of being able to find many sites that have already have created or curated a list of resources for women and IT professionals, and that linkable guide fits right there and should be on that page. So the goal for site finding is to find pages like that where our content can fit really well and where it serves the purpose. We've already done the process of creating content with a real audience in mind, and so now we just have to find that audience where they're at on the web. So we do a few different tactics here at Page One Power to do that, and we do start with just keyword-focused Boolean searches. They're a great place to start because we've already done the work of finding keywords and topics that are relevant to our audience, and then we can just throw it into Google and find websites that are already talking about similar things and relevant things. And for example, on the slide it says for the Atera piece, women in tech and in URL resources or in URL links. That's a great way to start, a great place to start to find those sites that we can use. Another tactic that we do is competitor backlinking. So Atera isn't the only IT monitoring service provider out there. There's plenty of businesses on the web doing and talking about that, and we can use their backlink profiles to find another great source of relevant sites and other communities that are talking about this sort of stuff that's relevant to our audience, and we can find those places that this content is going to really serve its purpose. And so Danica and I both do a lot of site finding and outreach, and so I'll let her take a second and share some more information about that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Alex. I just want to kind of piggyback off of what you said. Again, our content team does a lot of the same kinds of site finding techniques. We look for a lot of organic opportunities. We do the Boolean searches, and there's definitely some competitor backlinking involved, because that allows us to see what, competitors are doing and how they're doing it and how we can use that to our advantage to further our strategy moving forward. So I don't want to just reiterate what he said. I just wanted to add like a little bit of additional context that you might consider if you feel like you're maybe hitting a wall or you're looking for more creative ways that you might use the tools that you have at your disposal. So like on our team, we use, I'm just going to press the slide forward a little bit. We use SEMrush, we use Majestic and Moz like quite frequently. So typically when we use SEMrush, we're looking to see if there's healthy engagement, if there's traffic. You can maybe see what your competitors are doing or who your competitors are, but you can also use it in a different way to see your target site's competitors and use it as a means of finding new targets in a similar niche. So if there's a website you really, really want to be linked to or linked on, I mean, chances are maybe like 8% chance you might get a link on there or get a response that's maybe positive. But you can also see who their competitors are and open up new opportunities for yourself in that way. You can also use Majestic and Moz to see what your competitors are up to. Are they strategically link building? Are they putting in the work? And then you can try to fill in the gaps that they're missing out on. Like some things to think about are like, is your content comparable with your competitors? What are the gaps that they have? What are they missing out on? And what are you missing out on? And then you can bring, just going back to Atera, just see what your competitors are doing and like broad topics, while they might not immediately become conversions, will bring quality links and new audiences. And I think this is what a lot of people miss as they're doing a link building campaign, is they're too narrow in their focus when they could really get big wins with longer keywords if they're willing to put in the time to do that. That said, even if you don't have all of these tools readily available and you're looking more to doing just like Boolean searches, lots of people do that. There is nothing wrong with that. You might just look for guest authors on your target site and Google their bio. This will give you like a list of sites that do technically accept guest authors. And from there, you can work on refining your pitches for the site's audience. And we're going to hop back over to Alex really quick, who's going to discuss some outreach techniques.
Thank you, Danica. So as we put in a lot of work up to this point of making sure that we are writing clear, linkable content that's really valuable to real people on the web who are relevant to our audience and even to our product and the things that are in our wheelhouse and in our expertise. And so now we have the opportunity to outreach to these people, these sites, and these communities, and to explain to them and to show them the value of this content and how it can really help the people that they communicate with on a daily and weekly basis. And so the first step after we've done site finding is to find the best person to contact. Sometimes that can be really tough. You first need to know who is the best person to contact on the site. In the content side, it might be an editor or someone in charge of the blog or the page of the article would go up. On other sort of resource-centered pages, it might be like a head of a department if you're talking to a school, or it might be a webmaster or someone along those lines. And so sometimes some of that contact information can be pretty hard to find. You do need to take a little bit of time to look through department pages and staff directories and things like that. Other times it can be pretty simple and pretty easy. One tool that we like to use is hunter.io is a great place to go. It's a third-party kind of plugin that will help you by searching through by URL to find a number of contact information listed through the site. One thing we try to avoid is reaching out to like an info at or information at. Lots of times those inboxes are very full all the time of any email that website or company gets, and so it's a little easier to get lost in the mix there. But if all else fails, we can reach out there, and if we have a really solid outreach, we have found success in reaching to those more general email addresses. Next, we want to focus on subject lines. We want to make sure that they are brief. These are what the target site are going to see. You know, it's the first impression of our outreach and our content. And so we want to make sure they're short and sweet. We've had some success with subject lines that describe our linkable content, or ones that include the website domain, and others that simply ask if we can get in touch with the right person. And that comes in handy when we're not really sure of the email address that we're outreaching to. Next, we focus on the email body. We want to make sure that we avoid salesy and vague language. Norm mentioned that we don't want to really be promotional or talking too much about our specific products, but we've written this content to really serve a purpose and really serve a community. And so we want to make sure that that comes through in our outreach, that we're real people who have written really good content for other real people, and we're hoping to connect this content with that community and those people. And then next, we do want to send some follow-up emails. I think we're all pretty aware that sometimes it can get a little annoying if there's pestering emails from somebody or some company. So we don't want to send too many or too frequently, but it is a good idea to send a few to hopefully stay relevant in the inbox. And we found success sending follow-up emails anywhere between 5 days and 2 weeks, just to give an extra reminder to these target sites of our great content. And that's kind of how we do it in the research department. I'm sure Danica has a couple more ideas as far as the content department goes and her strategies.
Sure do. Let me tell you about them. So as far as outreach techniques for the content department, I think we follow a lot of the same principles that our research department does. But for content marketing in particular, I think in a lot of cases, people who do our job, and especially for content link building, we seem to do like a lot of mental gymnastics to prove that like we're not doing content marketing. And I think we do this for a reason. We've known since like 2013 that there's like a huge stigma against content marketers. Like I think what Matt Cutts said a zillion years ago, that content marketing is dead, right? So people don't like us, and this is just like a burden we get to carry when we go to work. But the stigma exists for a reason, and it's not because of the job itself. It exists, generally speaking, because content marketers have been going about their job in ways that just like don't work. So if I were to come up with like a golden rule about my job, I would say just don't waste people's time. And like, I mean, that's become even more apparent in the last year, where it's like, we're living in a pandemic. Receiving an email is almost traumatizing at this point, right? Like nobody has time for an unsolicited email, including myself, and that's my whole job. So like, to combat that, like if you're sending a legitimate outreach, you have to sort of recognize that you are battling for an editor's attention when they're getting hundreds of emails a day. So send something that's mutually beneficial. Send something that recognizes that you understand their audience, and be clear about what you want and what you expect from this relationship. Hone in on a pitch that will benefit the site and their audience as well as yours. Show them examples of what you've created or been a part of. And then like through that pitch, you show them what you're capable of doing, so they're able to make a decision that's yes or no for themselves. Content marketing, again, just as in research, is a numbers game. So being thorough in your pitches is going to save you time in the long run, because these pitches can be repurposed, retweaked, and even like just flat out no's are opportunities for growth and understanding as you move forward in your content campaign. So just recognize that like putting in the time to understand the audience and really like hone in on a specific like pitch or idea is only going to help you in the long run, because you can repurpose those things again and again, and you'll eventually land, a good relationship with the right audience. You just have to take the time to get to know that person. So now we're going to send it off to Michael, who is going to talk about measuring quality of links.
Thank you, Danica. So yeah, we do all this work, right? We create great linkable content. We find the sites that we want to target. We outreach to those sites. Hopefully at this point, you've done all this work. You're starting to see some links come in. The question is, how do you measure the quality of a link? Everybody has seen criteria for measuring the quality of a link. We've built tens of thousands of links at Page One Power over the last decade, and we've had pretty much the same formula even before Penguin algorithm update hit. And it's shown wins for our clients time and time again. And really what we look at is first and foremost relevance. You want to make sure that you're getting links that make logical sense for your brand, for your website, for your audience. So always put relevancy first when it comes to finding a good target site. Next, look at human value. So the link itself, is this link providing value to real human beings on the web? A good question to ask yourself is, in a world without Google, would this link still exist, right? Does it serve a purpose just outside of pure SEO? Make sure that your anchor text accurately describes the page that you're sending people to, all that kind of information. That user experience and that human value is such an important thing to keep things safe and natural. So once you get those two things out of the way, then I look at like the trustworthiness of a site. So look at the backlinking neighborhood, make sure they don't link out to spam. Look at things like the editorial standards of the site, right? Like if you see that a website is posting articles like, hey, what are the best payday loan sites? Immediately, that's probably a site that's just accepting paid posts or letting anybody publish on it. So look at the kind of editorial standards of the site. And then last, and I'm saying last on purpose because I really don't think it should be your leading indicator. Last, look at things like domain authority, page authority, trust flow, citation flow. Look at those third-party metrics to provide that guidance. So many companies lead with a DA requirement on links, and it's such, honestly, it's kind of a legacy of the old PR days back when almost all link building was spammy, and it's kind of carried over now. People kind of look for that next metric to hold to. It's an outdated way to think about quality when it comes to link building. So lead with human value and relevance. And from there, the authority side of the equation will fall into place. That example that we showed you earlier with Atera, we got them .gov and .edu links, and we did that without setting a barrier for DA. It was simply because we looked at quality based on relevance and human value, and that fell into place. So those are my tips for measuring link quality and how to set standards for your link building campaign. And now we're going to talk about reporting and tracking results. And Tyler is a project manager, and he's the perfect person to fill us in on that.
Thank you, Michael. So like Michael mentioned, I'm a project manager with Page One Power, and really my role here cannot be completed without everyone who has spoken before me, them being involved in this process, from content creation to content strategy from Norm and Danica, to outreach, site finding, and other aspects of resource link building that Alex mentioned. Really, that all comes down to how are you going to track your results and creating a solid SEO plan. And so for us, it really starts with just that. What are your SEO goals? Be honest with what your goals are. Is it increase in your traffic? Is it increasing in your keyword rankings? Do you know what keywords you should be ranking for? And really starting fundamentally at that place. Everything that we just discussed here really is part of that overall plan that you want to implement. And being honest and specific about your goals can really help an SEO strategy overall. And looking at your competition and what they're doing and so on. There are many ways to implement a solid plan. And speaking of your goals, you really need to have once you have your goals, so let's say it's increasing in traffic and increasing in keyword rankings, well, what needs to happen in order to actually achieve those goals? And that part can be really overwhelming. I know that in the poll that was mentioned earlier, specifically it was outlined that we are working on, that a lot of you have an SEO plan, or you know about SEO, but you don't know how to implement the strategy, or you're struggling with making it take off. In turn, once you know what you want, it makes it a little bit easier to outline what's needed to achieve those goals. So in most cases, it's content creation, a solid foundation for technical SEO, as well as looking at backlinks. All these things are needed, and as a part of an overall solid SEO strategy. Something you also need to consider is the timeline of any campaign in particular. So let's say you have your goals in mind, you have your strategy and how you're going to achieve those goals, but how long is it going to take? I like to use John F. Kennedy as an example. When he said we're going to go to the moon, he said in this decade, in a 10-year time period. No one's ever been to the moon before, but he still stated that time period. So in turn, we have to do something similar in SEO, where we might not have, we need to achieve this by blank date, for example, in 6 months to 12 months, but know that links take time to be crawled, to be indexed, content takes time to be created, research created and published. It takes a while for Google to crawl these individual pages, to index links that are built. And so most SEO campaigns can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. There's no expediting that process in particular. Getting all links at one time, publishing all your content at one time will really have diminishing returns. It's about consistency. It's about implementing that strategy to achieve those goals that you outlined. And then measuring those results, that's where it gets a little bit more up in the air. Does your organization use Ahrefs? Then you should use that as a foundation for reporting, especially if your organization is used to that, aware of that. You should use SEMrush if you use that as well. Same thing with Google Analytics and Search Console. All these tools, third-party or otherwise, can all be utilized to create a solid foundation for tracking and reporting. And very much within that same mindset, you need to say, what are our goals? Here's where we started. Let's check in 3 months, knowing that this will take a decent amount of time. What have we done in that 3-month time period? We've added content, gained a few links, and we know the keywords that we're tracking. Great. Where did we start? What is that looking like in 3 months? Are we seeing positive or negative movement? What can be done if we're seeing either or? And then in turn, checking in another 6 months, utilizing that same information to determine your overall success in a relatively small time period. But what we really recommend is when you're tracking these results is to, again, know where you're going, have that, know what information or where you started, and in turn utilize that as a guidepost to determine where you take this SEO campaign in general. And that's really where we come in as an organization, is working in so many different organizations and within so many different industries. We can give a really for the most part, a solid timeline on when we typically see results, given that we have worked in so many different industries and organizations. But again, as a reminder, you need a solid SEO goal, create a plan around that goal. You need to understand that this takes a decent amount of time, and you need to have reporting mechanisms in place to really A/B test and to show where you were to where you've been, or where you've been to where you currently are. I'll let Michael take it from here.
All right, thanks, Tyler. Well, thank you so much. This is the main presentation portion of it, and now I just want to show a quick workshop example of what this looks like in real life, how we would assess and look at a website. So I'm going to kind of walk through this example, and along the way, members from the team might have their own thoughts on the site. But what I think it's really cool to kind of see how brains work, live. because I like to pick like everyday brands that you can see. It's easier to kind of build that personal connection. So those who don't know, Splenda is an artificial sweetener brand. They do things like stevia and monk fruit, things like that. So for them to earn links, right, when I'm trying to assess a website to see like, okay, can we earn links for this website? The first thing I do is start looking through content. So I see they have this health section, and I was like, ooh, diabetes management. That made me excited because right there, we're talking about an audience-focused piece of content. So that piqued my interest. So I clicked that and added that to my tab here. I then clicked on the blog to take a look at some of those. The first thing I noticed is that there's not a lot of blog content, right? There's just 2 articles. And the first thing that we noticed, something Norm talked about, both of them are kind of product focused. They're talking a lot about their product. This one especially, is Splenda bad for you or good for you? So already I'm seeing some things that from a content perspective, if they're going to earn links, they need to start making some tweaks to their strategy. So need to get more blog content, need to get less product focused content. Now let's go to diabetes management, because this is one that I got excited about, right? I said from a variety of pages about diabetes. However, what's the first thing we see? How can Splenda help you manage your blood sugar levels? So immediately this becomes a problem. Don't compromise on great taste. When we reach out to resource pages for people with diabetes for this article or for this guide, they're going to see really quickly, well, this isn't really about how my audience, how can they be healthy while using Splenda? And they'll feel like you're promoting or advertising with them rather than trying to really provide value to their audience. And it's kind of a bummer because, what Alex talked about, using Boolean operators. So in URL resources from their diabetes, there's some really great resource pages out on the web all about diabetes. So, I pull up this one, integrateddiabetes.com. Again, it's about relevancy and who do you want to be an authority within? If you want to be an authority for audiences trying to manage diabetes, getting links from diabetes specific websites is a great way to show that authority. This is a great resource page, and it's got an information education section. So if you had just a purely informational guide about diabetes and how to manage that and how to manage your diet and exercise and all those topics, you could probably get a link from a page like this. Here's another one, lilydiabetes.com, external resources. I mean, these are the types of pages that would love to link to that kind of a resource, but you need to have a piece that's not about you. It's about them. It's about their audience and the people on their website. So that's just a real life example there of, and you can do the same thing with your own site. Look at your content and think about who you're talking to. Are you talking about you or are you talking about audiences? And if you notice that gap, that's a good opportunity for you to make that shift and try to start talking about audiences that have resource pages dedicated to them that you can help with. About that example there. Anyone want to throw anything in there? All right. Well, if we're all feeling good about it, then let's go ahead and kick it to the poll question. Cynthia, am I rolling the poll question? That's me, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
All right. Awesome. So in terms of the question here, we are doing an offer right now where we'll do a free 30-minute consultation, similar to what I just did right here, right? Identifying an opportunity, talking about how they could address that opportunity. I've got a link building expert on my team named Dylan who'd be happy to connect with you and do a 30-minute consultation with you. So if you're interested in taking part in that, click yes. If you're also interested in learning more about our services, he can also help you with that as well. But we're also happy to keep it purely informational and walk you through that. So yes or no, if you'd want to do a free consultation with our team member. And I think that puts me to the end of the deck here. Oh, sorry. The other question is, would you be interested? Actually, I think we're waiting on that one. So I'll go ahead and go back to this slide right here, and I'll turn it over to Cynthia.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, we can ask the audience that at the end of the presentation, that question will pop up at the end of their screen. But we've got quite a few questions for you and the team, which is really exciting. So we'll just get started. The first question is for Norm, and this comes from Kim. And Kim asks, what are your thoughts on the number of external links included in content?
To be frank, my thoughts are mostly negative because I feel like highly numerical metrics when you're trying to create human-focused content are mostly a distraction or at best a vanity metric. I think what we're really trying to communicate here is relevance from beginning to end is the key to everything. You want content that's relevant for the audience. It's relevant to your brand. You want to be able to create a relevant pitch when you outreach sites. So when it comes to balancing external links in the content that you're creating, do they make sense? Do they add value? Are you quoting experts and you need to show where you got that quote from? Are you taking statistics from someone else's research? Like, you have to cite that, otherwise it's plagiarism. Depending on how highly reliant you are on expert quotes or statistics or, other expert resources like that, that should be what defines the quantity of external citations in your content. There's no magic ratio between external links and internal links, or a number you have to hit in external citations to prove that you're authoritative. Those are all imaginary. I imagine if I looked at all the content that I've ever helped create through Page One Power, I could give you an average number or an average ratio, but that's just kind of a mathematical contrivance. It doesn't mean anything. So do what feels natural. Use external links where they're relevant, helpful, and appropriate, but I wouldn't worry that you're going to drown the value of your internal links through your external links. They should both be contextual.
Great. Thank you, Norm. We have another question. This one's from Jennifer, and this is to anyone on the team. Is there a maximum number of internal links you would put in a piece of content? The Atera example had 2 links, for example.
Asked and answered. I think it's the other side of the coin. You don't want to put so many internal links that it turns into an advertisement. And you certainly don't want them to be contextualized in calls to action. So don't stuff. There ought to be at least one to prove that the content you're creating is relevant to other pages on your site. But there's no minimum beyond 1, and there's no maximum. As long as they're relevant and appropriate, not distracting to the thrust of the content, I wouldn't worry about counting them.
If I could add also, I think that one thing we kind of touched on is, or we could have touched on is when you're talking about like e-commerce pages, like specifically, this is a perfect opportunity to put e-commerce pages that you really want to rank that are just really hard to link build for into your content, but you don't want to make it so apparent that that's the purpose of why you're building content that it detracts from whatever else you're trying to do within your on-site content. So I think if it makes sense, and like if you as a reader are not turned off by looking at something, then I think it's totally appropriate. I just make it look natural. Like if you're just like reading something and you don't see any red flags, I think that's totally a natural thing to do. It starts getting hairy when you're just like, oh, I'm just reading more advertising that's disguised as something useful, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Beth, and she asks, what is a general range of time when you can expect Google's algorithm to acknowledge your efforts? Is there a lapse?
I'm happy to chime in on this one real quick. It is something that a lot of brands will come to us and they'll say, hey, we've got 3 months and a ton of budget and we want to see results in 3 months. What can you do? And it's one of those things that time isn't always a problem that money can solve, right? I mean, you could build all these things, but sometimes it just takes time for links to be indexed and then for that to reflect in the algorithm. So I would say there's no exact amount of time on it. Sometimes it takes a few weeks to build a link and then to see the movement. Sometimes it can take a few months for you to build enough links that are being indexed and for that to then reflect in the search results. So it's kind of like the typical SEO answer. It depends, but I would say there is generally a little bit of a lag, whether that's, a week, a few weeks, or a couple months.
If I can chime in, when I talk to my team internally, it can be really tempting if you've written a keyword optimized article to want to immediately check, see, has it been published? Has it been indexed? Is it ranking? What's it ranking for? Is it at the top of the stack of the results? And the rule of thumb I tell everyone is, it depends on a lot of factors to determine how quickly Google will even notice it, much less how long it will take to appropriately evaluate it. But nothing is a trend until you've seen it for at least 3 months. If you see something rank overnight, it can feel like something worth celebrating. But the sad truth of that is, if you can rank over everything else that came before you that quickly, the reverse is also true. And some new website or content creator can also come along and outrank you just as quickly. So I think when you're trying to set expectations, you really need to temper them relative to how easy do you hope it will be for the next person? Because if you're in a competitive space and you're trying to rank for competitive keywords, you don't want to see results immediately that are overwhelmingly positive, because that probably is a sign that that's not a sustainable trend. It's not going to stay that positive for that long. But if you see that slow ramp up to positive change, that's probably a more reliable and sustainable trend. And frankly, that's much more desirable than an instant win.
Great, thanks. Our next question comes from Steven. He wants to know, any tips for overcoming challenges such as fewer opportunities in general for link building in the local space? Another question that's more of a comment, he says, Han shot first.
You're right, he did.
Check that one off the list. We got it answered. He did. Go ahead. If no one else has, I'd be happy to chime in on this. I mean, one thing that I see a lot of when I'm talking to folks that are kind of more locally focused brands is that because they're so focused on keyword focused content, all of their articles are, how to find the best dentist in Oklahoma City, how to keep your teeth clean in Oklahoma City. They'll just try to cram that localized thing in. And immediately, right, you've restricted your opportunities for links where, you might not be able to get highly super authoritative links, but if you're a dentist and you're an expert on your subject matter, there are health related blogs out there that would be happy to hear from you talking about a general topic about dental health. And you could get a link from those. And those, again, they might not be locally relevant, but they're topically relevant. You're talking about something that you're an expert in and getting links from sites that talk about those subjects. So one thing for a local brand to think about is don't just get so hung up on your location. Think about your actual trade or your craft or your industry. And if you're an expert on your subject matter, write an article about the industry or topic in general, and that can help you get links from more nationwide sites.
Yeah, I super agree. And I think that goes back into like a conversation that we have about people being very like keyword focused about certain things. So like, yeah, everyone wants to be like the best lawyer in Las Vegas, but you might also have luck in a national sphere. Like there are plenty of opportunities out there, and local link building is super important. I'm not going to like deny that that's a thing, but you really limit your opportunities when you do put qualifiers on some of your content. So like there just needs to be a balance between using localized keywords and making content for the more broad population if you're doing a link building campaign.
And I would also say there's some things you just can't fake. Like if you want to get links from your community, then be active in your community. That help your community, do charity within your community, do service within your community. Those are ways to build connections and relationships with people. I mean, we've gotten some great links for clients from local news sources by doing unlinked mentions because they did some good work in their location or in their city. They got some press for it. followed up with it, turned the unlinked mention into a great link from a local news site. So, be a good citizen. Doing good things will create some good karma for you and help you get some links.
Great. One question from Douglas, who really wants to know what metrics Tyler uses as the go-between metric between link volume, quality, and ranking increases. Does he report on page authority or domain authority as a middleman metric?
That is a great question, Douglas. And something that we actually get asked quite a bit. And the short answer is that we use... it goes back to what I mentioned earlier as far as the goals and what you're really trying to achieve. You can use domain authority, for instance, as a decent go-between if your boss or even yourself are aware of what that metric really means and how that metric is valued. You can use domain rank in the case of Ahrefs to determine the value of that website. You can also use general traffic of that website if you have that available, or average traffic. You can use all those different metrics in different ways, but really it comes down to what is currently being discussed within the organization, what are people familiar with, and does that metric provide context enough to ultimately make those conversations easier or make them more understood. For instance, we use or have used domain authority because the majority of people, regardless of just starting in the SEO space or experts, are familiar with it enough to be dangerous with it at times, or to understand that it can be a general marker, but that can indicate other positive or negative things. I think you can also get really hung up on utilizing focusing on links as individual assets and not looking at what did that link do as a whole, thinking about relevancy. So for instance, if you get focused on one link, what did this one link do for me is a question that we get asked quite a bit, at least in the beginning of campaigns. And what our typical response is that one, this link is, we built it, it's quality, is a really easy one. We're good at what we do, and there's relevancy behind the links that we build, there's focus and so on. But it's really about what was that link trying to achieve? And if that link is funneling authority to internal links that are e-commerce related or that are to important pages within your website, then that already checked off the box, especially if it's relevant, if it has decent authority metrics attached to it. That one link is part of an overall whole that's pushing that authority and essentially a vote to your particular website or page. And so, like a lot of our responses, it really does depend. But I would first say what makes it easy to communicate within your internal team. And then two, really think about why are those metrics communicated, and why are you getting any value out of communicating a particular metric? Try them all and see which one makes the most sense at times, and go with that one.
Great advice. Thank you. Our next question is from Alexander. How can an AI-based real estate tech platform compete with established incumbents like Zillow, Trulia, for example?
Who wants to take this?
I'm happy to chime in on it. I'm happy to chime in. You're not going to be able to compete with them for big head terms like homes in certain cities, right? It's like there's going to be keywords you can't compete on. So really, you're going to have to do a good job of keyword research to identify mid and long tail keywords that you can craft content for and create more relevant pages for those keywords so you can rank on that basis. And in the meantime, hopefully be doing consistent link building up the authority of your site, so that you can, then begin to compete for bigger and bigger keywords as the campaign rolls along. But I really wouldn't want to set the expectation that it's like, hey, if you just build, a million, because there's no way to organically earn the number of links that you need to earn to compete with them on an authority basis. So really, I would get really into that keyword research and content development to start driving traffic through alternative routes.
I can add to that one a little bit. I think it's interesting. There's nothing in that question that really differentiates it from being just a general business question and makes it an SEO question. How are you going to compete? If I was going to create content for a brand like that, that would probably be my question. What are you actually doing to differentiate your business model or your brand and your value proposition from these giant players who are already there? If you're just kind of doing the same thing and hoping to get your share of the pie, then no, I don't think you're going to be very competitive in SEO or in the marketplace. But if you have smarter algorithms, if you have, better machine learning training systems to get your AI working well, if you're doing something that really differentiates you from these really big established players, I tend to think that that can be reflected in your content. If you have better AI, have the people involved with that, with making that happen, write thought leadership content, break down how AI is changing real estate, write newsworthy topics about the intersection of technology and real estate. If you have a value proposition as a business, which if you're launching a business, you probably need to have that value proposition. You need that elevator pitch ready to go. I think that can inform your approach to content. If you have something new, unique, better, or just different in a compelling way, that can translate into how you communicate with the public and with potential visitors to your site.
Okay, we have time for one more question before we conclude the event. Advice on explaining SEO and setting expectations for the C-suite. They think everything happens overnight, and presenting the facts on this doesn't seem to work.
Michael, I think both you and I could cover this. If you want to cover it from more of a top level, and I can give some anecdotal experience.
For sure. And I saw another question that was along the same veins of, again, how do you get somebody to invest in link building or content marketing compared to SEM, when SEM, you can just pay for clicks, you know what you're getting out. What's the value of that? To me, and I face that same challenge because I'm trying to sell other companies on link building, not even internally, sell it. So I get that challenge. First and foremost, it's about showing opportunity. To me, you have to speak their language, and usually C-suite people, it's dollars. So one example that I used in a presentation was I found this brand called paycom.com, and they weren't investing in a good content strategy from a keyword perspective. So what I did was I found a brand that was, and I discovered that they were getting 100 times the amount of non-branded search traffic because they developed a good content strategy and link building strategy. From there, I was like, okay, well then, what's the dollar amount? The easiest way to find that was I said, okay, let's look at the average cost per click, and let's see how much in paid traffic Paycom would have to pay to get the same amount of traffic that Patriot Software was getting, their competitor. And I found that they'd have to spend almost $1 million a year, or was it $1 million a month? It was something ridiculous. It was an atrocious amount of money that they're missing out on because they're not investing in content for their brand on a regular basis. So right away, it's like, you could be getting millions of dollars a year in free clicks if you would, invest in this. And their site was more authoritative than the competitor site. They had everything in place that if they just would execute this strategy, they could be getting tons more non-branded search traffic. And there was real dollar value behind that. So I like to lay it out this way: find the opportunity, then present a roadmap on how to capture that opportunity. And if you can speak about it in dollars, that really helps you.
Absolutely. And I will reiterate that as well, is that mostly is how C-suite individuals look at their business as a whole, and in turn have everything that you're doing communicate to that bottom line, or to that whatever that goal might be, in this case typically associated with money. So why are we creating this content? Again, it's to provide authority or capture search traffic that we're losing out on from fill-in-the-blank competitor that we can be. This is what we need to do. We have that roadmap. And again, that is a solid plan in place in order to achieve those particular goals. I think that remembering that each C-suite individual or the C-suite team have different personalities. So you have to get the right people in the room. And so if you know what you're doing and you know that it's right, just remembering that if you can communicate how you're achieving those goals and speak to your target audience in a way that they understand, and reiterate how this is helping their bottom line. It's really one of the easier ways to communicate and to give yourself more time to show that success that you can. I want to personally say that I know that feeling and that pain at times. But in turn, once you get that buy-in, I really feel like you can do your job and like do it well without having that additional pressure. There are a lot of other avenues that you can explore.
Thank you so much. And that is all the time that we have today. Thanks again to Michael, Danica, Tyler, Alex, and Norm for this engaging presentation. If we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to pass it along to Page One Power. On behalf of Search Engine Lands, I want to thank everyone in our audience for attending this webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day.